Hey everybody, this is Robb Ryerse. Welcome to the Common Good Politics podcast. We've taken the show on the road today. Sadly, Doug Padgett's not with us, and that is because Doug is with the bus. The bus is broken down, and so we are here in Cabot, Arkansas, with part of the Vote Common Good team, and we're going to be having a conversation today with one of our friends that you've heard from before, Rodney Govens, along with a couple other folks. We're going to be talking with Rodney Bevis and Corey Spangler, and kind of having a conversation about what's going on in the country and what's going on here in Cabot, Arkansas. So here we go. Guys, thanks so much for coming out today, and we're going to kind of make do. We were hoping to be on the bus, but sometimes the bus breaks down. And like Doug says, the bus is like democracy. When it breaks, you fix it. And right. So it's being fixed right now. So
exactly.
Yeah, well, it's good to have a conversation with you, Rodney. Thanks for inviting us to be a part of what's happening today in Cabot. Why are we here? What's going on?
So, very uneventful Saturday here in Cabot. With campaign season kind of being ramped up, right? And we've got, a million different races up and down the ballot, especially here in Arkansas. Nerves are at an all-time high, especially for incumbents, incumbent Republicans specifically. And my opponent seems to be very nervous as he's had his cohort from Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene, decide to come down to Cabot and host a fundraiser. So we definitely wanted to go ahead and have a rally in response to that, to make sure that we present the good people of Arkansas and most of the people in Arkansas in the light that they need to be portrayed in.
Yeah. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is in town today.
Yes.
And, folks, anybody who's watching a politics podcast or listening to it probably knows who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. One of Donald Trump's biggest supporters in Congress, Congresswoman from Georgia, famous for all sorts of things. So she's in town here in Cabot doing a fundraiser. Is it for the county Republican Party, or is it specifically a fundraiser for your opponent, Rick Crawford?
I believe it's specifically for Rick Crawford and the federal race here. Again, it goes into nerve-wracking, right? Like, people are tired of the same old rigmarole with politics, Rob. People are tired of the divisiveness. So, it goes to show he's nervous, and he's nervous for a good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, joining you in kind of co-hosting the event today is your friend Robby Bevis. Robby, tell us a bit about you.
So family's been here since the late 1800s in Lonoke County. I've had family serve as state representatives. Uncle that was a county judge. Me and my father both have served on multiple boards, kind of behind the scenes, maybe not out front politics, but supporting the county in different ways. I sat on a couple other state boards as well too, so maybe not out front like Rodney and some of the others. Also, our family's been involved with CASA for almost 20 years. I've been an advocate since 17, so very involved in the community, and just want to show up, support Rodney in this.
Yep.
And just, like I said, he's Democrat, I'm Republican, but we're just trying to show that we can all come together and still get along.
Yeah.
And do we agree every day? No. We can shake hands and be friends at the end of the night.
Yeah. So, Robby, what is it about the politics of Marjorie Taylor Greene that, would cause you to want to do something with Rodney? Like, as a Republican, what is it about her politics that's bothersome to you?
Honestly, I don't even know what our politics are, but I do know what Rodney's are. And like I was saying, we may not agree on everything, but we agree on the big things. And I think that's the important ones. You find who you are as a person and you stand on those things. And as long as they don't go against your values and your morals, everything else can be negotiable.
Yeah.
And it worked out on the backside. But I don't turn on the news. I don't watch the news. I'm so tired of what you can and can't believe. So when it comes down to the wire, I'll look and do my research on who I'm going to vote for, and really don't even turn on the national politics to see what that rat race they're screaming and not screaming and who's what. It gets old.
Yep. So Rodney, the rally this evening in a couple hours is called a Rally for Decency. What do you mean by that?
So politics has become so divisive, and we politicize everything. And I never understood some of the things that we politicize, how we've gotten to this point. Now, perfect example is, police abusing, the system, right? Qualified immunity and, the police brutality that we see almost on, I would say, a weekly basis, if not a daily basis at this point. That shouldn't be a political issue.
Right.
That should not be a Democrat versus Republican issue. That should be we have a problem in the police force that we need to figure out a way to fix. Right? Now, we can disagree on how to fix it, but we definitely should all agree that there's a problem that we need to fix. It's the same thing when it comes to the Veterans Administration. It's the same thing when it comes to our military budget. It is the same thing when it comes to almost every real issue that Americans have.
Yes, I feel that way about climate change. How is this a politicized issue? How is this a partisan issue? It's crazy.
It's just amazing to me that things that we have in our society, things that we should have agreed on decades ago, are coming back to the forefront in a political manner.
Yeah.
And I think it's just indecent to do so.
Yeah. So I'm interested in kind of contrasting the divisiveness that you talked about with this idea of decency. What is it about that word that captures what you think we need in our politics? Well,
so unlike my friend here, Robby Bevis, I kind of do pay attention to statements and what people say, and especially on the political level, because these are our elected leaders. And when you have a congressional representative that talks about Jewish space lasers and talks about QAnon conspiracy theories, there's something that at the core is wrong. And there's nothing decent about that. You have to be able to live next to your neighbors. And neighbors in America come across all different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, religious beliefs, gender identities, everything. And at the end of the day, we're all Americans. We all should be paying taxes and being gainfully employed. That should be the ultimate goal. That's our neighbors, right? Jewish space lasers should never come up. Okay, and I keep bringing that up
because that's not a thing.
It's not a thing. That's the most salacious thing I've ever heard of, right? The QAnon conspiracy theories that she just continued to peddle for years and years and years, and all it did was create a rhetoric around and encourage violence around it, almost, where it was like, if you don't agree with me, then you're not American. You're not a patriot.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree with that. I'm a veteran. I served my country from 01 to 05. I served in Iraq from 03 to 04. I know I'm patriotic and I love this country, but that does not mean that I can't sit back and criticize my country when I know something's wrong too.
Yeah.
So I think from a decency perspective, we can have conversations and we can love our neighbors just like we love ourselves, and we can do the most humane thing and work together and find solutions. And that's what this rally tonight is all about.
Yeah, that's great. Corey, I want to kind of bring you into the conversation because you probably have a real interesting perspective as both a Cabot City Council person and the chair of the Democratic Party here in the area. What are your thoughts about like a nationally known political person like Marjorie Taylor Greene coming to Cabot, and how is that how is that for the town, and how is that like from your perspective, as is what it means for the party here.
I mean, I believe in free speech, right? She should be allowed to speak, and we should be allowed to go and protest and say that this is what our values. For the party, her coming was actually a boon because we got a lot of notoriety for it, for our protests, and for the stuff that Thomas was organizing down there. So for the party, it was good. For the city, I mean, she doesn't represent us. She doesn't represent our town or our values. She represents a faction within that party that invited her to come to the town. You know what I mean? So, I'm not going to say that it hurts the town or it makes us look bad, but
sure.
It's frustrating. It's just frustrating. Like, to know that enough of your people that are your neighbors and your friends and your constituents believe in the values that she claims to espouse and invite her to come do a book signing. It's frustrating. But yeah, like I said, it did provide a lot of visibility for the party. So, lemons out of lemonade or whatever. Wait, the reverse.
No, I like lemons out of lemonade. That's good. I like it. Rodney, you, as you think about this idea of divisiveness, really want to emphasize the kinds of things that bring people together across the political spectrum, the party spectrum, those kinds of things. And you and Robby are a good example of that because of your shared commitment and involvement with CASA. Tell folks about that and what CASA is and what your involvement looks like.
Yeah, I wore the shirt on purpose today, right? So court-appointed special advocates, we represent children's best interests and the children in family court. Robby started around the same time that I did in 2017, and it's the best job I never got paid for. I like making sure that everybody understands that as a volunteer role, right? And there's a lot of power in that because you get to impact a child's life, a child that has no voice in most cases. We're talking about kids in foster care, right? These are the kids that everybody knows that we have these kids that are sitting in society, and we have way too little homes to take care of them, and way too many kids in the system. So being able to work with these kids and then being able to, have Robby work alongside me, that's a huge thing, and that's a big thing that we definitely bonded over, and I think we both care deeply about.
Yeah. Robby, how did you get involved with CASA? And why was that something you wanted to do?
My mother was on the original board that hired the first director we had. So that's what I'm saying. Back 20 years ago, we have been involved. And then my ex-wife was an advocate, and after a time or two of her saying, hey, I'm in Cabot, I'm in Lonoke, I'm in such and such. If you don't hear from me in 30 minutes, look me up. It got, I'm not saying she told me things she shouldn't, but it got to where I was like, it's time for me to step up. And even if I'm not an advocate, I can at least be a sounding board for her to come home to, or I can go with her. And then in seeing that, there was only, at that time, only 2 or 3 men, and several of the women were like, we wish we had a man that could at least go and visit with us.
Yeah.
And so it was more, I hate to say a security role too, but just to be there for some of these other women to support them in going into not so the best situations, to pair with them, to give them security and comfort. And, the fact of just, where are these kids' voices, no matter, I've got cases that I've had 3 and 4 different DHS workers because the turnover is so high.
Yep.
They've got a stack of papers this high of numbers. The kids become, and I'd like to say be aggravated at them, but how can you be aggravated? Someone's got a stack.
Yep.
They do the best they can with what they have.
Yep.
They're underpaid and overworked. So at least we're there for that child through the whole system.
Yep.
And we, no matter how many foster homes they go through, no matter how many caseworkers go through, we are the continuous familiar face for these kids.
Yeah.
And I want to plug for Rodney, but a lot of people don't even realize we have to give, it's not only is it a volunteer, it's 40 hours of training to become the volunteer. So it's not just you walk in and say, I want to be an advocate.
Yep.
We have to have 12 hours a year of continuing education. So it's a big commitment for these people that step into these roles and do things.
How has being an advocate changed your perspective Has it changed your perspective on any particular issue, or kind of opened your eyes to something that you didn't expect?
The biggest thing it's opened my eyes to is, and I don't know how to say this the right way, but the lower income families
Yep.
that end up in these situations, and a lot of it is a generational role.
Yep.
What I find saddening, and me and Rodney's talked about, is some of these people aren't doing anything different than some of the affluent people.
Yep.
I don't want to say be told on, but it's Rodney Govens. He may have yelled at his kids, but there's nothing going on behind closed doors.
Yep.
And the affluent people don't get looked at as the same as the lower income people. And it breaks my heart because it's just so sad to see some these situations. Now, granted, affluent, they don't have holes in the floor and they've got decent cars and they've got the money to take care of their families, but sometimes the psychological damage that are being done to these kids isn't any different.
Yeah.
And for me, the other thing I've had to really learn is what I look as acceptable raising and what the state looks at as acceptable raising. You kind of have to, I would look at some of these situations that we leave these kids in and go, my child will never be in that.
Yeah.
But some of those situations are, I hate to say it, are still better than some of the foster care situations. And, it's just, you hate to say sometimes it's like people say in voting, I'm going to pick the lesser of the two evils.
Yep.
Even in some of these situations, it's the lesser of the two evils. And looking at their lifestyle and going, well, it may not be what's acceptable to me.
Yep.
But they do have a roof over their head. They do have running water. They got lights. It's not.
What do we call it? Minimal level of
living or something.
Minimal sufficient level of. Yep.
Wow.
And that's for me because I grew up, fifth generation farmer. My son's now 6, and I've worked with a lot of the, I'd say, lower income people. But so I was already in what's the word I'm looking for? When I've been around it.
Yeah.
So that some of those lifestyles, seeing that, exposed to. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I drew a blank. But I've been exposed to some of that. So and just I'm sorry, farming communities are generally a lot of the poor communities. They're not affluent and a lot of money, and so I've seen that. So some of that wasn't. The situations weren't as shocking to me as it is to a lot of the. I've said in training with women or with CASAs, and they're like, what do you mean they don't brush their teeth every day? And they're like, their parents didn't brush their teeth. They don't know to brush their teeth.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just shocking to some people that because they've never been exposed to that, they don't understand.
Yeah. Rodney, how is being an advocate, how has that shaped the kinds of things you want to do when you get to DC as a congressman?
Well, I think bare minimum, like, we don't currently have a congressional representative in the state, I would argue, that actually advocates for the people of Arkansas, period. And when I say advocate, I mean, we've got Helena, West Helena in the 1st Congressional District went without water 3 times this year. Right?
Yep.
We've got a congressional representative that could easily go down to Helena, West Helena anytime, see the situation for himself, and figure out a way to get some of that grant money available through the water subcommittee, but he's not doing that. We've got 3 other congressional representatives that decide to go behind closed doors to try to define and redesignate a national river against the wishes of the people. That's not advocacy. That's not representation. When I go and I advocate for my kids, I got to get them what they need first and foremost. And sometimes what they need is what they want. And I'll give you a quick story. I had a kid, Robby, he had a gang tattoo when he was 13 years old before I got the case. DHS fought me tooth and nail. He comes out of the Department of Youth Services, had some serious charges, but he wanted to play basketball. Travel ball, AAU. He made the team. You're traveling around, you're going to go play in North Little Rock where the rival gangs go to those games. They see that tattoo. It is what the kids call on site, is what the kids say. And that means immediately we have a problem and there will be violence.
Yep.
He did not feel
like
safe.
a Saline County GOP meeting.
Yeah. Just like a good old Saline County Republican Party meeting, right? But he has this tattoo.
There's some folks like watching from, I don't know, Wisconsin that are like, what? Just
Google it and go to video, and you will see. Folded like fresh laundry. But I digress.
Yes. They see the tattoo and it's on site.
It is a problem, and he's now with a foster family, so it's not just a problem for him.
Yeah.
It's also a problem for the foster family. And the DHS caseworker at the time, no names, you know, but she wanted to argue that he doesn't need any work done. He could just put makeup on. He's playing basketball. He's going to sweat it off.
Yeah, and a 13, 14-year-old kid wearing makeup?
Now he's 15, and he's got makeup on his arm. And he's playing competitive AAU basketball. Yeah. There is absolutely no way this is going to work out.
Yeah.
So I argued in court to get that tattoo covered up. That is advocacy.
Yeah.
That is what advocacy looks like. When you doing the right thing against all odds for the betterment of your people.
Yep.
That is taking a stand.
Yep.
And that's what we need.
My whole goal today is just to get you spun up and going.
I'm 3 Red Bulls in, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Come on.
So let's compare that to your opponent, Rick Crawford, who is currently suing the federal government. Not for other people in need.
No. I'm going to correct you. He's not suing the federal government.
Okay.
Bro. He's suing the United States taxpayer.
Okay.
He's suing us. He's suing every single person that pays taxes in this country.
Because as a congressman, he believes that his pay should be increased according to the cost of living increases, and he is suing the government, parenthetically the taxpayers, for back pay that he did not receive since he's been in Congress, and his $170,000 salary has not increased.
174.
Yeah.
So
he's advocating for him getting back pay.
But let's put this in context.
Yeah.
Because I'm a very common sense guy.
Yep.
I'm not a rocket scientist, right? So Rick Crawford decided to vote against the PAC Act, right? Which allowed especially the Vietnam era veterans to finally go get their benefits for being exposed to Agent Orange. He votes against that.
Yep. And burn pit folks from
toxic
Iraq
burn pit. That's the whole PAC Act. He votes against it. He says we can't afford it.
Yeah.
He then turns around and he votes against the American Rescue Plan and the American infrastructure.
Yep.
Because he says we can't afford it.
Yep.
Right? So that rural broadband expansion, all the bridges and all the road work that's getting done, he votes against, says we can't afford it. He votes against all these things and he says we can't afford these things, domestic violence programs and all sorts of stuff. Well, if we can't afford all this stuff over here, how in the world can I afford to pay you back pay and give you a pay raise above $200,000 a year? That just doesn't compute to me. If you're going to vote no on things, then you can't turn around and try to say that you're not getting paid enough. You're not advocating for people anymore. You're advocating for your own pockets. And that's what's wrong with politics today. That's why people like Robby turn the news off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't see Rick Crawford advocating and introducing legislation to increase the federal minimum wage.
Of course not.
Which is $7.50.
And has been for, 15, 20 years?
Yeah.
Cost of living continues to go up. Federal minimum wage continues to stay the same. And his excuse is, companies and corporations can't afford it. Well,
but he's suing the federal government for back pay because he thinks his salary should have been raised.
Right.
We're just It's not that his salary was raised and then it was like, oh well, we can't afford this. We'll catch up with you. We'll make you whole eventually. And that didn't happen. So he's paying for he's suing for something he rightfully deserves. his salary has not increased. They have not. Congress has not voted to increase their salaries.
That's the key. They vote on this stuff. Congress votes on their pay. This happens every session.
This is like my boss didn't give me a raise, so I'm going to sue him. It is the height of bizarre, weird, and indecent.
It is very indecent. It is inhumane, and I'm going to use his own words against him because he's made statements about labor before. If you do not like where you work, you don't have to work there.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not like your salary, you can go and get a different job at another company.
Yep. As we say around Vote Common Good, we believe that every person is a beloved child of God, salt of the earth, light of the world. Rick Crawford is the light of the world. But not every light of the world should be a congressman. He should take his dim little light and stop bothering the good people of Cabot, Arkansas.
Well, as I'll say what we say back where I'm from. Bless his whole heart.
Yeah. Corey, as a taxpayer in Cabot, as someone who lives in his district, how does this strike you? What do you think about this? And in case people want to know why are we talking so much about this, it's because this is the only thing Rick Crawford has done since he's been in Congress is sue the federal government for more money.
I'm frustrated more than anything.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated that cycle after cycle, these people get reelected.
Yeah.
They don't do anything for us.
Yeah.
Green over here, she came for a book signing to sell some books. You know what I mean? They're not advocating for real issues that affect real people. And I'm frustrated by the fact, how do you make people understand that, you can change this? You don't have to accept this.
Yes.
I felt that since I was in fourth grade, right? I've been a libertarian. I've come, I'm center left right now.
Yeah.
And I'm frustrated by how do we get these people to understand that they don't have to accept this? Right. That you don't have to accept the crumbs of emotionally driven talking points to satisfy, what you think it equates to change. You can have real leaders who care about real issues. It's not like I'm not mad at him more than anything. I'm frustrated that we, the people, can change this, and we have.
Yes. Yep. And there's a lot of folks that the reason that they don't make those changes is because they're they've got an identity as a Republican, right, that is just maybe it's a part of their religious identity, it's a part of their family identity. It's just kind of this is what we've always done kind of thing. One of the things that we talk about at Vote Common Good is an idea of exceptional candidates. That person who says, I would never vote for a Democrat, but I would vote for Rodney. And that willingness to make an exception. An exceptional candidate is someone is willing to, a voter is willing to make an exception for. Rodney, how are you giving people that kind of permission structure? Maybe I should be asking Robby this, as a Republican who is supportive of a Democrat running for Congress.
You want to take this? Because
I'd love to hear both of you.
I've got something to say about it, but I don't want to throw you completely
out. You go first, Rodney, because we know Rodney will talk.
I'm not going to say what, but there's been several coming to me asking me to run for a position.
Against Rodney?
No. A position. A local position.
Because I think the two of you running against each other would be awesome.
He's one that has kind of said, hey, I'll back you. And it's come around. It's like, Rodney, that's political suicide. He goes, but that's the exception. She goes, I don't care. I'm not. And that's why I personally hate parties.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to align somewhere with something, but I'll vote for a person.
Yep.
I don't like the party side of it.
Yep.
I don't agree with either side a lot of times. Yep. But he told me, he said, what would it look like if when I win, a national congressman supporting a local Republican. But that's where he's at. He's going to back the man that does the job.
Yep.
He's going to vote for what's the right thing. It's not a Republican thing, a Democrat thing, an independent thing. It's what's the right thing.
Yes. Well,
and somewhere we have lost politics. What is the right thing?
Yeah. Well, yesterday Dick Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris. So these are crazy times we live in, right?
And that's even. I'm going to change a little bit, but that's one thing that I've loved about Rodney is we sit down and have some hard race discussions.
Yep.
I'm a white heterosexual male in the South.
Yep.
That's not a very liked person anymore. and I'll never know what it is to be a black or African American.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't sit down with somebody and have those hard conversations,
yep.
I'll never know how to have sympathy or empathy with them.
Yeah. Well said.
So, I appreciate that I can ask him some probably off the wall questions sometimes, and he looks at me, really, that's what you're asking me. But I want to know. Yep. It's not a racist thing. I want to understand.
Yeah.
But we're good enough friends that we have those conversations.
Yes.
And he just kind of looks at me like, you're stupid, but let's go. I can't believe you asked me that.
I can't believe you brought that up.
Yeah.
But that's part of the whole thing of decency.
Yes.
Of you supporting a Republican if I run for a race, and a white and a black male sitting down and having those hard core discussions of what is it like to be in those situations?
Yep.
What was it like to be back in South Carolina and get pulled over in a white neighborhood and say, well, what are you doing in this neighborhood? You're not supposed to be here.
Yep.
I'll never know what that is. So to be able to sit down with you and have that conversation says the decency of who you are as a person. And somewhere it's just like with the Republican and Democrat Party, a lot of times with the whites and the blacks, we've lost that. Can we sit down and have a conversation? And that's the biggest reason I'm here today, because he said, hey, man, let's sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah. So great.
It's not a Republican Democrat thing. It's what is decency and what's best for the community.
Yep.
And let's sit down and talk.
Yes.
And everybody's got this school ground, you're going to play by my rules or I'm going to take my ball, go home politics.
Yep.
And we have lost bipartisan, what is best for the people.
Yes.
And that's what's aggravating me about our politics right now is there's no let's find common ground. Let's find what's best for the people. It's what's best for this party, what's best for that party, or what's best for me.
Yep.
There's no, preacher always said, God first, me last. And others first, me last.
Yep.
And that's Rodney's mentality is how can I take care of everybody else and Rodney last?
Yeah.
And too many politicians are, how am I going to take it? Just a perfect example. I'm going to say no to everything else, but I'll sure vote for give me a pay raise.
Yep.
And you look around, and that's the whole political scene right now is what's best for me. It's not what's best for the people.
Yeah.
And we've got to get back, and like he said, it's aggravating that we have the right, we have the power. But somewhere along the lines, we just put our hands up in there and say we don't. We just have to accept what we've given.
Yep.
And that is not acceptable anymore.
Yep. Yep. Well said.
I don't know what else I can add to that.
I bet you can add something.
You're gonna try though.
I am. Right. But I think your question of being an exceptional candidate, like how can you get that right? How can you get somebody to say, I normally vote Republican, but I'm voting for you. We're seeing that throughout the 1st Congressional District everywhere we go, whether it's Baxter County or whether it's down in Chico County. Every time I go door knocking, I seek out the Trump flags. I seek out the Republican paraphernalia because we all have concerns. Mm-hmm. But what's amazing to me, Rob, is all of our concerns are eerily similar.
Yep.
We all care about our kids. We all care about public education. We all care about our rights, right? We all care about our freedom. We do care about democracy. Every single person across the political spectrum. So let's have the conversation because, I'm running as a Democrat. But your stereotype of Democrats like, oh, you just want to take away all the guns. I don't want to take away anybody's guns. What I do want to have is a conversation about how we can stop what happened in Georgia to one of my good friends.
Yep.
Because one of my good friends was there, Matt Tanner. I don't want anybody to have to go through that.
Yep.
I know how I feel knowing that one of my good friends that I lifted weights with, that I did CrossFit competitions with, that I talk to almost on a daily basis. I know how I feel about knowing that he was in that situation, and that one of his best friends, the best man in his wedding, is no longer walking this earth. I know how I feel and how emotional I get about that. I can't imagine that continuing to be replicated. That touches me too personally. It's time that we just sit down and have a conversation on how we can fix that.
Yep.
Mississippi County is too large for that sheriff's department to guarantee a 5-second response time.
Yep.
You're going to need to be able to protect your family. I don't want to take everybody's guns away. But for crying out loud, a 14-year-old don't need an AR-15 either.
Yep.
Funny, we had a conversation about guns right before we came in, and I was talking about I work security at our church, and several of us do carry at church, and he looked at me and he said, "You carry at church?" He said, "That's the last place anybody should have a gun." I said, "You're right." I said, "But that's where we're at."
But there's
said,
there have been
churches
shootings.
and schools. These guys are not attacking police officers and military. They're going after the innocent. And that's the sad thing, is we're in a time to where we literally need security at churches and schools.
Yeah.
The last 2 places that should never even have to think about having a gun, you have to protect yourself even there. And it's sad, and like you said, it's not about. I agree with him. We don't need to take guns away from people, but there are certain rights and certain things that should be put into place to protect these people and to protect each individual.
Yep, for sure.
Right. I pulled some numbers for you to your point about bipartisanship. I was looking at this earlier today. 88% of the country believes in preventing people with mental illness from purchasing guns. 88% of the country.
Yep.
88% of Republicans even. 79% of the country believes in increasing the minimum age to buy a gun to 21 years old. 79% of the country. 69% of Republicans. 66% of people support banning high-capacity rounds or magazines over 10 rounds, which I don't know if I agree with that, but 66% of the country does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And 64% of the country supports an assault weapons ban.
Yep.
Like these are bipartisan issues.
Yes, and there's so many things like that. That there's broad agreement.
Yeah. Medicare for all.
Now you're speaking my language. Yep. There's so many things like that where there's broad agreement, but we have a dysfunctional Congress that can't get stuff done because they put the whole government. Yeah.
Well, we got all these special interests, all these special interests, and they're padding the pockets of these politicians. And once you get elected, you're sitting on 15 or 20 different paid board positions, and you definitely don't want to vote against your interests, right? Sitting on that board.
Yeah.
So we've got to remove the conflicts of interest from Congress and from the Senate and from the government overall. I mean, the U.S. Supreme Court at this point, for crying out loud, we got to have a conversation about.
Yep.
If I got to hear another story about an RV lot.
Well, how can somebody get elected in a position that doesn't even has a very low net worth in their life?
Yeah.
And supposedly makes 100, and I'm not saying it's Rick, but just pick any of them.
Yep.
No, it's Rick.
And you make, I'll round it to 200,000 for either a year, and you live, but yet when you get out of that political position, you're worth millions and billions.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Where's that net worth? I know how net worth works.
Yeah.
Or at least I know how mine works. I had to work for it.
I'm not privileged enough to put those two words together in the same sentence. I know what something's worth, and I know what a net is. I don't know what net worth means. You're gonna have to explain that to me.
So, Rodney, I want to go back to something you said earlier. You talked about when you're out knocking on doors and talking with people, you go towards the houses that have the Trump flags.
Yes.
There's a fearlessness about you. Is that just how you're wired, or what's that about?
The Army taught me something valuable, and growing up, I learned this too. Bullies are everywhere.
Yep.
But the one thing that a bully can't stand is confrontation. When you confront a bully and you break it down and you get them broken down, now all of a sudden we no longer have a bullying situation, we have a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we see, and I'll use a house up in Harrison, Arkansas, because we all know where that is.
Yep.
There's a house in Harrison, Arkansas. It's right on Highway 65.
And maybe for folks that don't know,
okay,
that are watching.
For the folks in Wisconsin.
Yep,
right?
for the folks in Wisconsin, you might not know that Harrison, Arkansas, which is in Rodney's district, is the most racist town in America.
Allegedly.
It's been labeled that.
Yep.
The most racist town in America.
It has a very racist history.
Yep.
There's also an active sign on Highway 65, White Pride Radio. Yep. Which is owned and operated by Thomas Robb and Jason Robb, his son.
Yep.
And
no relation.
They own that. No relation at all to Robb Ryerse. But Thomas Robb owns the actual billboard and land around it. Yep. So that sign's not going anywhere.
Yep. Yep.
And when you drive up Highway 65 on your way to Branson, Missouri, which is what most folks, use that highway for, and you pass through, you see that sign, and you can react in a million different ways, Rob.
Yep.
I look at it as it's a humbling sign for me, but it's also an opportunity.
Yeah. So I interrupted you. You're headed to a house in Harrison.
Yep. I'm headed to the house in Harrison, and that sign is a perfect segue into it. You've got these flags, and the Trump flags, and it's got they've got all sorts of racial epithets, and they've got a couple cuss words about Joe and Kamala, and I stopped there. Obviously, you got something to say, and you feel like you need to be heard. Let me hear you out. So I stopped there, and I'm bringing one of my push cards up, and I knock on the door, and this guy looks like he had never seen somebody at his doorstep a day in his life. And he says, "Can I help you?" Well, I'm 260 pounds, so I hope he addressed me properly, right? I can be a little intimidating, I guess, physically, right? But I told him, I introduced myself. I said, "I'm running for Congress for this area. I wanted to come by and introduce myself." So, "You run as a Republican or a Democrat?" "I'm running as a Democrat." He said, "Well, I don't think we have much to talk about." I said, "I'm looking around. I think we do." I said, "Just give me one thing that you're like, I need to know that my representative cares about this issue." And he said, "Well, I'm pro-life." And I looked at him and I said, "I'm willing to bet you I'm more pro-life than you are." And we had a conversation around CASA and foster care. Yep. And I gave him the numbers: 4,400 kids in foster care, 1,700 approved homes in the state of Arkansas. He never fostered, nor adopted, nor volunteered his time. So I said, "See?" And I showed him my CASA badge. "I'm more pro-life than you." And that man gave me a bottle of water. He took my push card and he said, "I wish you the best of luck. You just earned my vote." That's why I go. You can say I'm a glutton for punishment, but it's through those kinds of conversations that you do make the equitable change in society.
Yeah. Rodney, I want you to be in Congress so bad. Oh yeah. There's let's talk about what you want to accomplish this evening at the Rally for Decency. Folks have been invited. There's going to be a DJ. There's going to be some food trucks. There's going to be some speakers, and we'll have a good time. But it's more than just having a good time. There's a message you'd like to send about who you are, who you believe the people of Cabot are, who you believe the people of Arkansas and the country are and should be.
I think Cabot represents most of America, in all honesty.
Yeah.
We're not in a metro area. We're far enough away from Little Rock that we have our little town, but we're big enough that we got a Chick-fil-A. So I think that's highly representative of America, where we're far enough away, but we're close enough. Mm-hmm. And I think the people in Cabot are very unique, and I think we have more in common than even we believe to be true. And I think that once we get together and we just have conversations similar to some of the conversations me and Brock. I still can't believe he's talked about that, but
Yep.
if we have these conversations,
Yes.
because it's coming from a good place, I imagine this world and how much better it'll be when we leave it.
Yeah.
If we can continue those kinds of conversations, and that's what I hope to gain through tonight.
Yeah.
Bringing a diverse group of people together, the diversity here in Cabot, coming together for just one common cause. Just because we know Rick Crawford's got to get out of office, let's go see what this new congressional representative's going to be like, and let's have a conversation with this guy, and let's grab a bison burger.
Yeah.
'Cause the bison burger truck's here.
Yeah.
So
And let's be good to each other.
absolutely.
Yep. Regardless of party, regardless of all the other things, we can be good to each other.
Regardless of race, party, economic background, right? I don't have a book signing, so I'm not charging anybody any money. So I'm sure if I wrote a book, it'd be a burner. But, I just want people to come together in one common cause. And that's, if me and Robby can do it, then anybody can.
Yeah. Rodney, how can people find you? They want to follow along. They want to, even more importantly, donate to your campaign. How can they find you?
So first and foremost, the website, rodneyforcongress.org. That's RODNEYFORCONGRESS.org. You can follow us on all the social medias, Rodney for Congress. We're on Twitter or X or whatever Elon's calling it today. We're on Instagram, Threads, TikTok. I don't dance though, so don't look for that. Facebook, of course. And we have Act Blue and Good Change as our fundraising platforms digitally. And of course, when you visit our website, we take the old-fashioned checks too. But the biggest thing is get out and vote. And get your friends to go vote. Because as Councilman Corey Spangler said, we literally have the power to change and make it the way we want it to be. All we got to do is go do it. Yep. That's the biggest thing that I want everybody to understand about our campaign.
Yeah. Corey, Robby, Rodney, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.